Welcome to Cali High episode 66, a garden chat with Nat and Halle Pennington. I'm your host Chenzo, and in this episode, we return to the world of cannabis for a talk with Nat Pennington and his daughter Halle Pennington of the Humboldt Seed Company about the origins of cultivars, registering strains in Colombia, searching for landraces in Jamaica, the development of triploids, which I found out has nothing to do with three leaves, old strains, new strains, as well as scratch and sniff cannabis, and more. Stay tuned. Cali High is stoked to be here with Nat and Halle Pennington today of the Humboldt Seed Company. How are you guys?
We're doing well.
Excellent.
A beautiful spring day in Humboldt, and spring is finally here in California, as I'm sure it's there for you as well.
Oh yeah, it's big spring after all the rain.
Yep.
Just trying to keep the bugs down.
I know the bugs are going to be bad this year.
Yep.
We decided to do the interview in our little kitchen garden outside of our cabin out here at the Anchor Farm, a Humboldt Seed Company. We've been here since Halle was a little tyke, and right now there's a bunch of other folks in the kitchen. They're cooking up something special, so I knew it would be too crazy loud in there. So hopefully everybody hears us okay.
I'm sure it'll be okay. We'll fix it up. So a little Sunday brunch going on?
Yeah, I think they're making hummus, which they've never done that before. And I think what it was we cleaned out the pantry area, and they found some cans of chickpeas that needed to get used. So
yep. I used to have an Armenian girlfriend, and her mother taught me how to make hummus.
Nice.
Long time ago. So
we have our own garlic every year. We do like a little garlic garden. We've been saving the seeds for too long that I can remember, and so this is the time of year where it's like you got to use it, or else it doesn't stick around much longer. And we're about to harvest the other big patch of it over there too. So
how cool. Yeah. I'm trying to grow some food as well. So far I've only got arugula, basil, cilantro, and Italian parsley, but it's a start.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, when I moved out here in 1995, the first thing I did, just right down the road in the little town of Orleans in Humboldt County, is where most of the farmers market farms are for Humboldt. And Humboldt has, of course, Humboldt State University, which is now Cal Poly Humboldt, and Arcata. It's one of the bigger farmers markets on the whole West Coast, as far as, at least it was. At one point in time, it was the biggest in the country. And so when I came out here, I was 18 and I needed work. I, basically hitchhiked my way out here, and I worked on these organic farms down there in the Big Valley. And that was really like what made growing cannabis sort of natural for me. Was not like necessarily going onto the internet sites and like having to, buy all the fancy ingredients, but just like knowing the basis of organic farming was really, I feel like it made a huge difference for me. I was like, well, this stuff seems a lot like the tomatoes, and all we did to those was this, that, and the other, and boom, we had tomatoes galore. So I'm going to try that. Next thing I know, it's like, man, I got a lot of ganja out of that.
Yeah, I've been trying to not buy any more soil and just keep the soil alive, and, maybe add a little worm castings or whatever needs to be done. I've even tried some compost pots, and I got a 45-gallon pot that I'm composting in. But yeah, organic is the way to go, I believe.
Yeah.
Always tastes better that way.
Yeah. And I heard that it's better for you.
We're always talking about the tomato analogy. You're like, yeah, that tomato that you see in Safeway looks perfect, and I mean, I can see right through it, to be honest. I'm like,
tasteless.
I'm like, it's shaped nice. And there's no like, it's not a single spot on it or anything like that. But I can see like, literally, I can see the weird mealy texture inside of it. It's
Seriously.
like,
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves after growing up with him out here is when I go and I'll order something like, a caprese salad or something like that, and it says heirloom tomatoes, and you're expecting these beautiful, like super flavorful, amazing tomato, and you get served one of those like nasty, mealy GMO tomatoes. And I mean, it's just the most disappointing thing after you've had like endless perfect fresh tomatoes all summer long. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, I like heirloom tomatoes if they're really heirloom. They seem to be the better tasting of the ones that I find at Whole Foods or somewhere like that. But maybe
try growing some tomatoes. And I mean, we always said like cannabis is the garden gateway drug, and it like seen a lot of people get grow some weed plants because they want to smoke their own, which is awesome. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's cool that it gets people just back in touch with playing around with growing things, nature, and all that good stuff. And
yeah,
I mean, we've got basil in our little garden here. We've got our autoflowers right behind us. I don't know if you can see them, but we'll go on a little garden tour. We'll go on a little tour.
Okay.
Before the end of the interview, we'll walk around the spot.
Excellent. So, I've been doing my research as usual, and what really something that caught my eye was your 5 questions with Forbes magazine, but that was cool. I have more than 5, so let me start here. I read somewhere that you were registering strains in Colombia. Now, are those like Colombian strains or your strains? And how do you register a strain in Colombia?
So yeah, that's interesting. Some of the countries, and we have been definitely putting ourselves out there across the country. I'm thinking earthquake alert.
Well, it's a good thing you're outside.
Yeah, it's a 6.0 off the coast of Northern California.
Ooh.
But we're not there. We're inland. It's far enough in Humboldt that this earthquake's probably not affecting us. But that's a pretty significant earthquake. It looks like it's happening right now in maybe near our office on the coast. And
well, I hope everybody's okay.
Well, we'll find out. I'll ask my wife to get up on everybody out there so we don't have to interrupt the interview. I mean, as people might know, earthquakes are kind of a normal thing.
Yep, I've lived through 2 big ones down here.
You just recently had some decent ones?
I'm talking about, what was it, 71 and 94.
Right.
When like freeways fell down and,
Just recently,
So,
well, Halle, you were there for the one on the coast. That was a wild ride, wasn't it?
yeah, definitely. We've had a few good ones in the last few years, honestly. There's been a few that are long, drawn out ones. So it'll be just shaking and for long enough for you to sit there and be like, all right.
Oh, it was the earthquake. No, it wasn't the earthquake. All right, here we go. Get that back.
All right. Professional camera adjuster.
Did it turn upside down on you or anything? No.
I think I saw the stand that you were putting your phone on.
Yeah, we did. We have our phone on a stand. Okay.
All righty. So back to registering strains in Colombia.
Yeah. So as cannabis kind of becomes, legal or whatever, regulated across the globe, we obviously want to participate. I mean, we feel like we definitely have something to share and offer. And so in Colombia, they have this very onerous process that it's a lot of countries I think should probably try to avoid. But what it does is it makes it, if you want to produce cannabis you have this very long, several year process to get your strain or cultivar, they would probably call it, registered. And so, yeah, we did initiate that process. We do have our blueberry muffin is registered down there, but it's a little bit ridiculous because, as I'm sure anybody who's interested in cannabis in the United States is aware, we're, as breeders collectively, whether just in the US or even internationally, we're like very quickly coming up with new varieties. So if you have something that, our blueberry muffin seems to withstand the test of time, but generally,
Two thumbs up on that one.
the lifespan of a cannabis variety or strain is not necessarily super long, unfortunately. So it had been. The OG Kush, of course, was popular forever, but
of course, there's going to be some classics that always stay around. I think our blueberry muffin was a great option for this project because that's one that I'll smoke probably until I'm about to croak, basically. So, but there are things that we at least have new, better crosses of, new versions of, and even for the blueberry muffin, for example, we've made our blueberry cupcake lines, and so we're always hunting and looking for the next best thing, and things like that. It's hard to commit to the one thing and not everyone.
So I think it's interesting. I think the guess is that either that's going to be one of those rules down there that doesn't always just, that a lot of people just collectively decide to ignore. But nonetheless, yes, that's been an effort to get some things registered down there, and a valiant effort. That's been, Ben Lynn kind of has been going out and sort of reaching out to some of those international markets, which is great. But, we've seen a lot of them are as sort of volatile or even more volatile than what we see in California and the US in general, where, you can make your very, very best guess about what the smartest move is to have a, at least sustainable business. And you can totally be,
but I think it's a great for us to dip our toes into, in a sense, because also, like, as you mentioned, it's so volatile that we don't know that, in the next few years, regulations couldn't require that, all over the place for us to even do interstate. So, for us to gear up and be prepared to end up in that position if we absolutely have to. By all means, I would like to avoid as much paperwork as possible, but that's just not the reality anymore in this industry.
Yeah. Hey, were you able to locate any of the old good Colombian strains and bring them back?
Yeah, there was some. I know Ben brought some Colombian strains back. We went down to Jamaica. If people watch our YouTube, we've got a cool video about collecting landraces in Jamaica. And the interesting thing about that is that things have changed so much in the last 20 years that while it is really cool to incorporate those genetics into new efforts and new breeding techniques and practices, for us, we're very comfortable growing the landrace genetics ourselves because we don't have expectations. We don't depend on producing flower and having it be a certain way to make our living, because we're strictly looking for seeds and new seed. It's getting windy a little bit. New seed varieties, but anyways, land races are great, and they sound very romantic. Of course, you're like,
I know.
This land race from Colombia or Jamaica that's been around forever. And the problem is that, we haven't even had the concept of seedless cannabis hasn't really been a thing for that long. And so,
except for in Thailand,
seedless,
that was the first seedless I ever saw. Thai sticks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thai sticks. Yeah, they must have just been really on it with that, huh?
Oh yeah.
You got back from Thailand, right?
Yeah.
And I've grown what was purported to be landrace Thai, and it's nothing. It's like something the Hmong, like the hemp from the Hmong tribe, mixed with something else, and it's But the funny thing is, and I was arguing with somebody about it and telling them they don't know what they're talking about. Like 5 days later, I'm in Whole Foods. I'm waiting for the elevator to go up to the bathroom, and some guy comes in, and we start talking, and he says he like lived in Thailand for a while, and I ask him, and if he speaks Thai, and we start speaking Thai to each other, waiting for the elevator, and then we have this whole conversation in Thai, and then we go to the bathroom, and we come back down, and he takes me out to his car, and he's as old as I am, right? And spent time in the military and has been living in Thailand for like the last, well, maybe besides the last 2 years, about 10 years before that, and long time before that. Long story short, he opens his trunk. There's a big bag. He pulls out 2 giant nuggies. I smell them. I haven't smelled that since '82, right?
Wow.
And so he's like kind of a ski bum guy, and I probably won't see him again until like the snow is melted, but he's got the seeds, and I know where we talked about where he sourced them. He got them from chief of police in a location I will not divulge at the moment, but it's the real Thai, and so maybe one day we'll get that to you. That's something worth having.
We had Thai strains about 8 years ago. I had a few Thai strains, and they were or supposedly, of course, but they were some of the most frosty, beautiful cannabis buds that we had on the farm that year, and I was actually thrilled and crossed some things into them, but then of course we got into the world of testing cannabis potency, and they were testing like 13%. A lot of people, you would assume that the frost and the trichomes that you see on buds are somehow correlated to the potency, the THC potency, at least, I should say. And that's not the case at all. You can have some of the most frosty, beautiful looking flowers come back testing, 10%.
It's always disappointing when that is the case,
but they probably have cannabinoids in there that we just don't know. We're not smart enough to look for yet, and that's the thing, is that's the huge problem with basing any kind of decision on the laboratory results that we have right now in like wanting to. It's tough for us with breeding. It's sort of like having to choose between whether we're making our customers happy, or we're following our passions, or clearly there's no denying that cannabis that doesn't test very high doesn't sell. And
right.
So if growing commercially, then why in the world would you grow something that you can't sell? And that's all just very basic logic.
Yeah.
And there's no getting around it. Unless you're some kind of an independently wealthy trust fund, people are always like giving us a hard time. Like, oh, why do you, worry about the THC or whatever? And we're just like, because we don't have tons of money, right? We're not like, we're doing this as a
business.
It's a business. And unfortunately, like, we haven't taken any investment money, and we don't have, even if we had, like, our investors would be even more on us about doing just high THC varieties.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but I mean, the overall goal is the business needs to at least pay for itself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That definitely involves having some high testers in the arsenal.
If we didn't break even, we would, it just wouldn't happen, because we wouldn't have the people working. We wouldn't have the,
Yep.
I mean, the goddamn licenses are so freaking expensive. And I mean, it's getting a little better. They've realized that they've, made some mistakes, I think, at the state level and even at the local level. But
Yeah, I saw something about taxes being bundled into a different category, or getting rid of some and just making one. The United Cannabis Business Association down here was working with this. I think it was the state. I don't know exactly the outcome of that.
There's good things happening. There's good
Yeah.
stuff. Whether it's too little, too late is yet to be seen. I mean, there are so many big mega farms. Like, there are many that are over 100 acres at this point, and there's just a lot of like real irony in the industry that it makes you wonder whether there is a greater sort of plan to just kind of take it away from people that may have been rebellious in the original growing of it, sort of like,
Yeah. Well, once
the people
politicians
that
get their hands on it.
What's that?
I said once politicians get their hands on it, I think, which they kind of already have since they are in charge of legislation and things like that. It just kind of ruins the whole cosmic vibe of it.
Well, it's crazy now because, we're seeing like even 40 minutes down the road from us, there was a facility built out that I think took around $18 million investment. And it's now going up for auction at $3.5 million. And so if you think about it, like that opens the door for all these people to just kind of walk right in and be like, all right, this is nice. This is already all set up. You're on a great deal on it.
Well, it's 40
crazy.
They took $40 million in investment to make it. And I mean, it's worth what it's worth. Like, unfortunately, that $36 million is, those investors are bummed. It's gone.
I bet they are.
I mean, yeah, you're right though, Halle. Somebody could jump in and swoop it up and
at least make it, fairly profitable if they only have to pay 3.5.
Right. I know. It seems bizarre. It's such a bizarre thing. I mean,
yeah.
But I would say like the pendulum swings, and so Humboldt, we still have this like incredible knowledge and wealth of experience of people that have held out here, and we lost some of them though to like really easy mistakes. And I mean, when people were around us like taking millions and millions of dollars in investment money, we were somewhat kind of like, oh crap, are we going to be able to survive even though we're in something? I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Even though we're something that's like, here, Halle, maybe you can help. What if we have that bucket? Put it on the bucket. I'll just hold it for a minute. Like, even if we had weren't like a totally different niche, it still was scary. We were like, shoot, what are we gonna do? And one of the sad things was that I think that'll work great. One of the sad things was that the county and some of the elected officials were kind of like, took those projects more seriously than the small local person that had been here for a long time. And so we were kind of always getting, our applications and permit documents and things were getting sort of attention last, let's just say, or cast to the side somewhat, it felt like. And the ones that were like, oh yeah, we just got another $10 million from some rich person and so now we'll do whatever you want us to do as far as our applications and blah blah blah.
Team of 10 consultants writing the whole entire thing for him. I mean, you should have seen this first initial application that he submitted, and he wrote pretty much all of it himself. It was like a binder this thick.
Yeah.
It was like he wrote a novel.
It was it was beyond master's thesis. It was, and I had experience writing grants and writing environmental documents and reports for the Klamath River and the salmon and all that stuff. So thank God I had that, because a lot of people that didn't, the consultants are helpful and great, but sometimes, they just, they're not like, if your project doesn't make it through, they're not out of a job. They have 20 projects, and
right. So there's not a lot of real care and knowledge going into it.
I mean, I don't want to say that, because there is a lot of the time care and knowledge, and they have. I mean, there are consultants that could have done way better than I did, but the fact that I did it, I think, made, when I would call the county and say, "What's going on? I haven't, heard back," or I just want to, you to tell me that at least I'm in good standing now, because, you haven't been communicative, and I know I turned everything in that I was supposed to. And I see, Joe down the road just got hauled off in handcuffs last week. And I don't really want that to happen to my family and I. So am I good or what? And they'd be like, "Oh, let me see. Here's your application. Oh, okay. You are your own consultant, or you're writing all the documents." And I'm like, "Yep." And they're like, "Actually, yeah, you are good." They're always like, "We've never seen it done like this, but we can't poke any holes in it." So,
that's cool.
yeah.
I wrote my own conscientious objector application for the U.S. Navy as the first Buddhist conscientious objector on the grounds of bad karma, and I actually succeeded. No lawyer would take my case, but so.
Yeah.
So another thing I read, that you've developed scratch and sniff cannabis samples. Is that true? Now,
did that a long time ago. It was actually my wife Amber in there. Do you remember when?
Yeah, that was forever. Well, it didn't really take off the first time, though. I think we were a little ahead of the times, maybe.
I mean, I'm not trying to brag. It's a freaking pain in our ass. We're always kind of like a little ahead of our time. True.
I get it. What was it? The tissue culture lab in my old bedroom when
we were doing tissue culture in 2015, 16, and we kind of realized at that point, we were kind of like, this has some good utility, but it's not like. And now it's like, been the hottest new thing to do across the entire industry for the last 3 years. Get lots of investor money if you mention those words, little buzzwords.
Realize that it has its advantages, maybe to clean a genetic or just to preserve something for a long period of time. For any kind of scale production, it's just not the most practical option.
It's onerous and slow, and it takes a really long time for the plants to come out of tissue culture. Whereas with seeds, they are actually cleaner than tissue culture entirely. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Tissue culture can still have hop latent virus, whereas the seed is very, very unlikely to have it inside the embryo. And then, seeds come out of their shell raring and ready to go and catch up and surpass clones as far as how big you can get a plant in no time. And tissue culture seems to kind of creep back into reality. It's sort of needs to wake up. It has a long, slow wake up. But we don't want to sit around and dish tissue culture. I mean, the scratch sniff, there's a greenhouse right over here that if my Wi-Fi was a little better, I'd just go walk with you. But we'll try it. But anyway, we had blueberry muffin in there, and what was it that made me ask Amber? Anyway, so my wife Amber's like, if you could just make a scratch and sniff with this smell here, and because it's such a potently smelling strain, and she was like, people would love that. And I was like, oh man, you're right. And so I just said, and the first time we did it with the magazine, and we had the terpene extraction, which Ben has gotten super into the terpene extraction. He does that a ton, and so that's been amazing. But got that, and then found a place that would do the process of actually turning it into something that lasts a long time in the scratch and sniff ink type form. And it's a fairly natural process, and you're just taking the plant's essence, the essential oil, and putting it into a format that is not only is like lasts a long time and it's easy to share, but it also doesn't have cannabinoids in it, because I mean, that's the only thing that it really leaves behind. So it really takes all of the essence, the terpenes and the esters and the flavonoids and all the different things. There are so many things beyond terpenes that make up the real smell of cannabis.
Right.
It carries all of those, but it won't carry the waxy compounds that are cannabinoids. And so leaving those behind may affect the smell ever so slightly, but we feel like, I mean, you get the benefit is that it's completely and totally legal as, you know, a non-THC, you know, whatever you, not even hemp. It just doesn't have anything in it that's a controlled substance. So
maybe there's a perfume line in the future.
We worked with a brand that made a perfume line and a cologne line out of our cannabinoids, or out of our terpenes, excuse me.
The blueberry or what?
What was it?
Fog and Tree.
Fog and Tree, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that might have been a tad bit ahead of its time.
It was ahead of its time.
Well.
Yeah.
You know, cannabis still had such a stigma around it almost. And I first smelled it and I was like, this smells amazing. I love it. I love the idea. But I also was just imagining whoever squirts them on their wrist and then hops in the car and accidentally gets pulled over on their way to work. I was like, this is going to be a hard one to explain in some situations.
Yeah. Hey, when you guys...
So we did, to your original question.
Okay.
We're like the tangent masters here.
That's all right. I like tangents.
I told Halle, because I used to do interviews for the salmon stuff and have sometimes these like, you know, press would actually want to like rattle you and stuff. And I'd always be like, you know, it doesn't matter what they ask. Just talk about what you want to talk about. So apologies, that probably carries over sometimes.
Well, we did do a salmon interview one time, if you remember.
About that, yeah. Well, you know, now the dams will officially be 100% out of the Klamath River
next year, right?
End of next fall, yes. So the first dam will be gone this year. At the end of this fall, you can't really do a lot of this stuff over the winter just because of the high flow. But then by next fall, that we'll have a completely free-flowing Klamath River.
Wow.
And yeah, like as I've told people a million times, these are like antiquated dams, and they don't produce like the power grid. When Pacificor was in negotiations with us, we would talk about that, and they would, you know, we had a guy take us to the side and he was like, you know what, if we were to just shut off the breaker for Klamath Dam projects, we wouldn't even see the needle on our overall grid move. Like it would move as much as, you know, like it's nothing. They were basically like, it's, and the fact is that every single year we have to build 13 facilities that produce the equivalent amount of power as those dams. So people are always like, oh, you're taking out all these, you know, like what they would call renewable energy. And it's like, you know, this destroyed like the entire salmon run, the third largest salmon run on the West Coast of the United States. And, you know, where every single year we have to build 13 of these things. And to get that salmon run back, we have to build 14 one year. You know, like what the fucking, that doesn't, you know, there's no difference there. And they don't store water. They you know, they don't control floods because they have to be maintained full for the power plants to run. It's just this whole terrible design of, you know, the 1930s, 40s, 50s. I mean, no disrespect to those engineers, but they just didn't think about this kind of stuff back then. It was just like, you know, oh, there's more salmon than you could ever want. I mean, they had, you know, like if you go into I always say, like, back then there was so much salmon that they never could have dreamed that it would be a problem.
it's happened so fast if you really think about it, like on a scale too. I mean, that's not that much time realistically from 1930s to now. It's devastating what has happened. The impact, the negative impact to benefit ratio is just, it's like, completely out of whack in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think the natives will be happy.
It's toxic. You can't limit it because of the dams. I was going to
say, I don't remember the last time that I even, went further than knee deep in that river, just because it's so disgusting. I don't let my dog near it, because if he drinks the water, he could die in the summer.
Well, we go rafting down it.
Yeah, but we raft down it. But I don't.
But at certain times, yes, at certain times, there's like warnings, and it's like, and it's because of these unnatural algal blooms that happen in the reservoirs,
right.
That will be gone. So it's really exciting for us, and it's exciting for, I think, a lot of the Pacific Northwest, because people just don't understand. I mean, we're in California, but we are part of the Pacific Northwest here in Humboldt County, and we have redwoods, and we have coniferous forest, and look right behind us. And obviously it's not rainy all year, and we still have, that's one of the beauties of Humboldt, and why I think cannabis became so popular from here is, we have this very unique climate that is, partly cold nights, and last night it was probably 50 degrees, 40 degrees. We had a little campfire and had s'mores because we had friends over, but you can do that all summer long in Humboldt. That's one of the things I love about Humboldt, is like it always cools off enough that you can enjoy
the evening. Huh?
Enjoy the evening.
Yeah. And
then today it doesn't feel like it's going to get quite as hot, but yesterday it got to the 90s, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So plants love that.
So I was going to ask you guys, how many states are you in, and does the market differ from each state to state? I mean,
it definitely is pretty different in every state. That's one thing that we've kind of had to adapt to. I mean, there's some places that have legalized and gone in that direction, but haven't really rolled out regulation. And so, as someone who's trying to establish, very serious brand somewhere, it's hard for us to jump into those doors. Like, New York, for example, has been a little bit of a tricky one. We wouldn't want to, get a property or make any big decisions until they let us know, what is going to be okay and what isn't. So.
Yeah, we did do a little satellite in New York and kind of had a nursery operation and made it so that people could get seeds in as legal of a way as they could, or even get plants in as legal of a way as they could in New York last year. And so many people, like, the state didn't really have it together. I mean, it's not their fault. It's no one's fault, but it just like, we were kind of ahead of our time a little bit, I think. And, and, we didn't need to have that significant of an offering over there. And so, we were there though, and we definitely met a lot of people, and it was really helpful for a lot of people that we were there. It made it so that maybe we broke even instead of, making any money, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. And, I think, you live and learn, and it's like, it's all just part of the process. And there's a lot to complain about. We have a lot to be thankful about, I think, in some respects, just being that we have this niche, and that we, I started breeding cannabis in 1997 in Humboldt, and is my youngest daughter here.
Hi there.
So, that was great timing. You know what I mean? I had, and saw that there would be a need to have seeds and new types of cannabis, and so really followed that passion and stuck to it. And we have one of the more established seed. Go ahead.
Sorry. What were your original cultivars that you started with way back then?
Well, it was somewhat before they really had. I mean, before cannabis had so many names. It was kind of like still pretty clandestine, and so some of the very best things that I came across as breeding and selecting and selling cannabis in the medical, framework that we had here in California for so many years, were not things that came to me with strain names. They were just these are really good seeds from Joe up in Oregon, and these ones came from Southern Humboldt, and it was Ed's favorite last year, and it was purple, and a lot of them had different descriptors and stuff, and of course there were varieties around like Trainwreck, and there was no such thing as OG Kush, and there was no such thing as there just wasn't very many strain names, and so we did have there a thing became popular that they called Salmon Creek Big Bud, and it's like probably not a name that people would choose these days, because it's like it's so it was a type of weed that made big buds, and it came from a place called Salmon Creek in Southern Humboldt.
Yeah,
and that was one of the most sort of famous places where weed came from. And of course, I'm sure people wrote on their bags a lot of the time Salmon Creek Big Bud, and then a lot of helicopters went up Salmon Creek, because I would always imagine like a lot of weed is getting picked up going across the country with that that. I wonder where this came from. Oh, it says it came from Salmon Creek, and it's Big Bud.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the first ones we worked with didn't have names. And then, we obviously had Trainwreck, and we just got everything. We literally, that's one of the beauties of Humboldt, is that, like, really, it's been such a massive hub for cannabis that pretty much every kind of cannabis has made its way through here. And people brought some of the first Afghani cultivars that people actually brought back from Afghanistan. Like I have a friend whose father was here in the early 70s and specifically went on a mission to go find seeds in Afghanistan and Nepal and in India, and brought them back. And I mean, he could be responsible for 80% of modern cannabis just doing that one trip.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's his dad. His dad will never let. I begged him before, like, please do an interview or tell your story of doing that. And it's just those guys had their fun, and they have those stories to share with people that they know and trust, but they're not always super excited to really go out.
I did interview Bobby Ackerley of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love a few years ago, who had gone to Kandahar and driven a Volkswagen van full of Afghani Primo back across Europe and then shipped it to the East Coast and drove it here. And those guys also brought seeds.
Yeah.
And some of the, legends of Maui Wowie ended up being like crosses between the Afghani and the Oaxacan or whatever. But yeah.
Well, if you go back that far, try to keeping the seeds out of the cannabis was not common at all. Some of the
everything had seeds in it except the tie sticks.
Right. Yeah. That's really interesting that you brought that up.
Yep.
But yeah, we figured out, kind of mastered the whole sensimilla, seeds or cannabis without seed in Humboldt.
Yeah.
And
I first saw it around like 79. The first California seedless. It was like 4 times as much as Colombian.
Yeah.
Instead of 500 a pound, it was 2,000. So, But so here's something interesting. What about the development of triploids? We were talking about that a little bit.
Right. So Triploid is fairly high tech seed technology. I mean, technology, I guess. Yeah. You need a flow cytometer to be able to check and make sure that they are actually as you say they are, and so that's pretty high tech. And
they're sterile.
Well, they should be sterile in theory. They are not always sterile, we're finding out, but they, for the most part, if your goal is to grow seedless cannabis, which obviously is the goal of most commercial people, then yes, it's a much better option for not having to worry about that.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, there's other benefits as well. It's supposed to increase the yields on average. I think, it was found to be like around at least 20%.
Yeah, so it's still, there are some people that have been making triploids and hemp, and it's still definitely in its sort of like infancy especially for cannabis, for THC cannabis. But there are a lot of indications that triploids will potentially produce sort of superior, more commercially viable options than diploids. And for folks that are aware of all this, it's been around for a while. Like, seedless watermelons are triploid. They're bananas, strawberries actually are octoploid a lot of the time.
Oh wow!
But ploidy is how many sets of chromosomes are in the nucleus of each cell, and that's not including reproductive cells, which are usually just haploid, which means one single chromosome. But the way that you make triploids is you can use. They occur in nature, so they'll also occur naturally. It's a much lower. It's fairly rare to find it.
Wouldn't be reliable for breeding.
Yeah, it wouldn't be reliable, and you don't. It doesn't carry on past that unless you clone it. So
I got some out of the squirt from last year. Believe it or not, my friend, I turned them on to some seeds.
That's actually a different. What you're referring to is when you see the 3 leaves, right? The 3, and what that's called is a world taxonomy, and people often assume that is triploid, and it's not. It's just a really common early mutation in the beginning of a plant's growth, where it'll produce the 3 first sets of true leaves, and then oftentimes it'll just eventually go back to normal. To where it's like the parallel opposing nodes. So triploid is entirely different. It's not something that you can observe externally at all. It's something that you would have to have a flow cytometer to or do genetic sequencing to be able to see it. And
that's beyond my pay grade.
That's funny because there's popular cultivars that have been released by well-known breeders, and they didn't even have any idea themselves that it was just a naturally occurring triploid, and so that was maybe part of why it was their selection. It was probably pretty dense yielder.
Yeah.
They were obviously drawn to it for a reason, but then again, it's not something you can observe with the naked eye.
We discovered that the Mac 1 is a triploid, and nobody had any idea.
Which one?
Mac 1.
Oh, wow.
It was a calculator strain, and did Richard end up reaching out to him and informing him of that? Yeah, I don't think he even knew up until the scientist that we work with was like, hey, bud, I happened to test this Mac 1, and next thing you know.
Turns out.
Yeah.
So do real triploids have also 3 leaves?
No, nothing. It has
No,
nothing.
they look basically, especially in a vegetative state, there's really not any identifiable markers that you could tell them apart. They have the exact same leaves, same structure overall, but we are starting to monitor basically just to see if they really do have more overall vigor and also, of course, yield.
Mm-hmm.
So we produced about, what are we up to, like 10 different types of triploid varieties, and we're testing them out right now all across the state, actually across the country.
It's going to be our first year. We're bringing the triploids into our annual pheno hunt process, which is always a big thing for us. It's probably my favorite.
Shoot, I want to participate in that.
Because it's going to be one of our first real field tests where we get to see them next to a population of diploid cannabis plants as well. So,
I know we talked about this, and the selection process is somewhat limited, but how did you select males when you did?
Right. Well, yeah. So as people probably know, more and more seed companies have joined us in doing the feminized seeds. We've kind of, we've been doing this for 25 years at least. So that technology wasn't as prevalent before, and we didn't utilize it for the first 15 years of breeding. And so we selected males in the day. We rub the stems, when they're about this tall, and I still do this, to be honest, but when they're like this tall, you go out and you just like rub the stems, and there's like little, they're actually trichomes that are having a different function, and you get kind of like an idea of the.
I mean, you can absolutely tell, one of them will just smell 3 times stronger than another.
Exactly.
And that's what,
I thought that's what it was.
Gonna be probably a stickier cultivator or cultivar finishes than.
That's cool.
Maybe the one but.
And then
that, and also, I mean, just the obvious things too. Like you have some that are, almost double vigorous than another one, and that's going to be an advantage that you might want to select for. And
structure.
There's always good things to look at, but it doesn't really compare quite to being able to look at 2 female plants with beautiful flower, and and then you imagine the exact traits that you want to see out of that cross right away.
Yeah. Well,
do you get what she's saying about the feminized process? Why it's so advantageous? Aside from the fact that you end up with all female seeds, which kind of makes it easier for the grower, but you want to explain it again?
I mean, really, it's the fact that when you're breeding with male on female, you're only getting that female flower visual of the female plant, and so there's always this portion that is kind of a mystery. You're doing your best educated guesswork there. Obviously, sniff it, we look at it and make sure the structure is great, it's nice and vigorous, pest resistant, whatever. Aside from those things, you really don't know what it would look like as a female. And so when feminized breeding came along, it just gave us the opportunity to actually, set our eyes on, exactly what we're crossing together every single time. And for brand new crosses, that's really important, especially,
So for people that don't understand, how do we know exactly the female, what she looks like when we're making feminized seeds? Because we're going to...
because we go pheno hunt it beforehand, and so we have that.
But then we take that selection that we've made, and now we put silver on it, and it actually effectively changes it to a male now, but it has the same chromosome, the same DNA that's the plant that we looked at 2 months ago, but now turned it into a male plant, and so therefore it makes pollen that has the DNA of that beautiful flower that we just looked at 3 months ago or whatever. I mean, I'm kind of, it takes a long time to do this shit, but you could do it in 3 months in theory, but it's usually harder. Anyway, so we then reverse its sex, and now we've got this plant that's putting out pollen that has all female XX chromosomes too. So that's the reason why when it lands on another female plant, the stigma and the ovum all on female plants has XX chromosomes as well. So you don't have this coin flip that you have with regular plant breeding.
Yeah.
It took, I was at UC Davis doing salmon genomics with some of my best friends there that are professors there. And we would talk about this stuff, and I'd just go over and over again, what are the potential problems with breeding this way? Because I didn't want to jump fully into it like we have without understanding if it was going to negatively affect the species or if I was going to be doing something terrible. And there's just not really negative. If you can do it wrong, and there can be negative, you can create more hermaphrodite traits in cannabis by doing it incorrectly. But we learned quickly how to do it properly, and we don't do that. And so we don't see, we keep really, really good data about any reports that come back from our customers about hermaphrodites, and the percentage of hermaphrodites in regular plants is regular breeding is just as high or sometimes even higher. Than
not
that
only that, but
of the feminized.
Sorry to interrupt, but we do pretty extreme stress testing on all of our breeding chambers as well. And so, throughout the entire process, we're almost weekly checking on the plants. And if there's, anyone that has a herm site on it, it immediately gets taken out. And that way it's not going into production at all.
Yeah.
And you can't stress test a male plant for hermaphrodites. It's like, so that's another, it just goes on and on. The reasons that we prefer feminized breeding over regular breeding just haven't ever seemed to stop. It's just been ridiculous how much better it is. And some people are like, oh, it's not natural. And I'm just like, it's colloidal silver. You can use colloidal silver to, like, I drop that in I get earache and I use it. I get, if I have a sore throat, occasionally I use it for that. And it's just like, literally, it's not dangerous. It's silver, We put it in our silverware and put it in our mouths every Thanksgiving or whatever,
So in your current market breakdown between feminized autoflower and regular seeds, what's the percentages there?
Well, you mean feminized autoflower versus...
Oh, well, okay. So you have, of the three types of seeds, you have regular seeds, you have feminized seeds, and you have autoflower seeds, which are also feminized, right?
Yeah.
So how does that break down as far as what people are into?
We're like 90, people are buying 98% feminized now for the most part. And we still get people buy the regular because they want to do breeding. They want to, have their first foray into breeding. And I would say, if you're trying your first foray into breeding, maybe it is easier to do regular breeding. It is. It definitely is. And it's easier. But, I still would, maybe say it's not a bad thing if you jump right into feminized breeding. And we're always going to maintain a regular line here. We're always going to try to keep that around. So we do regular breeding. We have, what do we have now? Maybe 10?
Down to 10 to 12 regular strains at this point.
And 50 of the other. So
how about the new strains? What are you excited about now?
All of them.
The
favorites?
Is going to be really good.
Which one?
I don't know if you've even announced this anywhere yet, but we just finally picked 2 official names for this season's drops.
The orange cream pop is coming. That's coming up. We're breeding that one right now. I kind of wish I could walk you over there to the field. And maybe what I'll do is I might try to send you some pictures. And I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I can edit them into the episode.
Do a little video. If I walk over there with Halle, we can walk over. I'll show you part of our orange cream pop selection, and we have our jelly donuts selection happening over there. Then we have the clones. And so, it'd be a little window into how much work goes into making something. But this
that would be great.
The orange cream puff is 3 years in preparation to actually put it out to the public. And so this is, I know the guys that we actually did the scratch and sniff with, Burr's Place and One Straw Farms down in Calaveras, which if you want, Halle will send you. We're doing this massive pheno hunt this fall. Pheno Frenzy was your name.
Yep, I think it's a fun name. It's nice and catchy, But we're basically opening the doors for our. Normally, it's more of a private group pheno hunt, but we're going to invite some of our just industry friends, our local colleagues, and of course some press folks as well.
Oh, I'd love to come. We're
going to get out into these fields. I think we have 10 farms that we're going to be doing it with, maybe more. I'm losing track already, but it's going to be a ton of phenos and a lot of selecting to do. We're all going to have our little rating sheet with about 10 different categories that we try to observe. And of course we're not doing this on every single plant, but once you're walking through and you start to notice what really catches your eye, then everyone kind of gets in on it. And we always go back at the end. We'll revisit probably the lot of 20 that somebody rated good. Everyone turns in their sheet. We're like, these all got 9 through 10. Let's all go check these out again as a group. And so
yeah,
we did this in 2018. We did 10,000 plants.
I remember.
I think we had 6-7 farms that year. This year we haven't settled on the exact number that we're going to pheno hunt. To me, it's not as much about that as it is just getting a broad spectrum of genetics. I know we're going to look through some of the stuff that we did with the Sensi Seed Bank and maybe try to see if there's some old school skunk genetics we can find. We're just going to really open it up, but also keep it tight. Our phenotype rating sheet it's always been available for anybody to download. We pretty much still use a lot of the same variables that we did in 2017, 16, 17, 18. And that was kind of when we formalized our pheno hunting processes. And I feel like everybody in the world now pheno hunting is such a popular word to use.
It is, but I think, it gets thrown around a little loosely. And, I think when it comes down to it, we're really doing it in such an in-depth and scaled way that I don't think there's any way we could do it better.
Yeah, well, 10,000 plants.
In California,
hello.
Yeah, and that was kind of like we knew that the shit was about to hit the fan, and California was going to be a monster of cannabis and cannabis growing, and that's whatever. It's like, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. And so in that feeling of that coming down the pipe, I was like, here we go. Let's freaking do it. The good part is that we have we can look at a lot of different kinds of weed around the state with all of our partnerships and stuff that we have. So let's, make a pheno hunt out of this massive industry. And so year one of California legalization, we were out there, looking through 10,000 plants, trying to find, and that's been huge for us since then. We've had even some of those varieties that first year still are big for us, and we've refined them. I mean, whenever you find a pheno, it's like now you found a clone. That's the beginning of your job as a breeder. Like, that is literally step one. And it's like ridiculous in the space that we're in, because so many people are just like, oh, I found a cool clone. I'm going to, get really
they're releasing that
rich
clone,
and famous,
It's funny because you'll see things, they get released once, and that clone, people love it. And it's, we have beautiful clone lines, of course, that we've found in this process too.
Cheers.
The problem is sometimes when you get these things,
I'm gonna sit on a bucket.
We'll get these genetics, and people will, our local friends and farmers will be like, oh, I've been running this lately and I've been loving it. Maybe you guys should check it out, try it. And the problem is, sometimes we'll make a little pheno hunt cross just to see it, and you plant these things, and it's like there's genetics and things coming up out of these random, basically clone lines that you never would have thought. It's like you have a short little stumpy sativa, indica looking one, a long stretchy sativa looking one. It's like all across the board.
You're gonna see grandma, great grandpa.
They smell like anything that you could throw in there. It's like
when you breed those clones,
that's what
that
I'm
one
saying.
famous clone.
It's like basically like you actually open up what's inside of that genetic, and you're getting this whole mess of muddled things. Versus,
more than just the one clone.
Yeah, versus like before we release something, like he said with the orange cream pop, it's been in the works for 3 years, and that's because we want people to be able to say it's someone trying to do their first time breeding, or a gardener that just really likes stable genetics. I think we all kind of want our stuff to smell uniform enough, but we're not gonna just set them up with something completely random every time. We call those pheno hunt lines because that's what they are.
Yeah,
well, we got a little kitchen garden here behind us, and it's a mess, and it's not our focus at all. But I still want to be able to have a BLT in June and July and be like, yes, this is the best time to have a BLT. And if I planted a whole bunch of Brandywine tomatoes, which are like my favorite big, juicy heirloom tomatoes, and instead I got one that was kind of like a Brandywine, and I got cherry tomatoes, and I got those weird ones that are meant for sauce, and I got these other ones, I'd be pretty pissed at that seed company. I'd be like, damn, there goes my BLT, don't mess with my BLT right now. But
how dare they throw in a Marzano?
Yeah, Marzano, that's what it is. Yeah. We love those too. But
oh yeah. We may have to do another little stop in a minute here, but
why don't I take the show for a walk up over to show off some of these new varieties that we're working on. People can get excited about them for next year, and I'll just do solo because I don't know if the internet really is going to reach over there. We're actually getting some new repeaters and routers, so that it should be good up there.
Oh, that's cool. Should we try it then?
Or
do you want to just film and then send me films?
I definitely can do that. I can definitely film and send you films. So,
okay,
I'll keep it to like 5 minutes tops, and you edit down whatever you want. But Halle and I'll go walk over and show what's happening.
Okay, excellent. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, the Cali High podcast. We talked about the jelly donuts. It's a new one. These are jelly donuts for selection right here. We've already selected out quite a few of them. This is our receiver number 1, and then the receiver number 2s, and then we have clones. Of course, there'll be most of the receivers, and then orange cream pop was another one that we mentioned. This is a block of the orange cream pop in development, and we'll be selecting out of these. We've already pulled some out, and then moving on to hibiscus. There's some hibiscus here, and what do we have here? Ooh, the C4. This is a new thing that we haven't even named yet. Some Humboldt headband. What do we have here? This is Granny Candy, another strain we're working on. We might call it Berries and Cream. We haven't exactly decided yet. But new genetics sort of in trial. Good old lemongrass, that's one we've had for a long time. Looking nice and uniform. And squirt. Gotta redo that one this year. Time to make some more squirt for the world.
And more orange cream pop. Lots and lots of orange cream pop. We love that one. It's really good. Orange cream pop is one we're really excited about. All right. Anyways, there's a lot more that I could show you, but this is the farm here. Watering our garlic plantation over there. Our metric center, tool center. This is another greenhouse. More seedlings coming. Nothing more important than labeling incredibly well when you're a seed company. And we're doing some projects looking for the very best strains for extraction purposes with bare extraction over here. So we've got strains from 4 or 5 different breeders, all just hunting what's the best to do mostly live resin or washing. Some more hibiscus here, hella jellies. We're staggering everything this year so we don't have just everything coming at once, which we've learned is pretty important. Staggering is crucial. All right. Thank you guys for coming along with us today. Once again, signing out from the greenhouse up in Humboldt County. Thanks for joining us on the Cali High podcast. Good job, Chenzo. We love it. Keep up the good work, man.
You've been listening to Cali High episode 66, a garden chat with Nat and Halle Pennington. Special thanks to our guests, Nat Pennington and Halle Pennington of the Humboldt Seed Company. I'm your host, Chenzo Nico, also known as Vincent Nicoletti. The Humboldt Seed Company can be found on Instagram at the Humboldt Seed Company, on the web at https://Humboldt Seed Company. Cali High's theme written and recorded by Vince Nicoletti, Jordan Webb, and Namir Blade. Cali High podcast and theme are copywritten, and the Cali High logo is trademarked. Featured music for the credits, I Don't Know What to Say by Vince Nicoletti. Please donate to Cali High at patreon.com/CaliHighLA. Please like, follow, and subscribe to Cali High on YouTube. Email us with any questions to CaliHighPodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at CaliHighLA, on all podcast platforms and audio pretty much. Cali High is a Chenzo Nico production. Stay safe and be blessed.